Chapter 10. Addicts' Lessons Learned and Advice for Parents. Years of addiction, years of sobriety. A lifetime spent either abusing or addressing the problem of drugs and alcohol. Believe me, I've learned a thing or two about what can go wrong and how to make it right. The road to sobriety is a long and difficult one, my friends, as you've seen from my own experience, but it can be successfully traveled. Here are some thoughts on what I've learned along the way. May these help guide you and your loved ones to the same destination. 1. Recovery only works if you want it to. If you are trying to get sober in order to please someone else, it's not going to work. I've tried that. I quit because my girlfriend Jenny begged me to. I quit because the judge ordered me to. I quit because my father threatened to kick me out of the house. Every time was short-lived. I ended up losing the girl, doing the time, getting the boot from my house. Why? Well, on one level, I did want to please these people. But the main reason I reverted to my addictive ways was that I really didn't want to stop for myself, first and foremost. I wanted to continue drinking and doing drugs, but I wanted to get these people off my back and avoid any consequences of my usage. When I finally admitted to myself that I was going to die soon, and that I didn't want to die, and the only way to prevent that was to quit, that's when I put down the drink. Willingly. Until you value your own life more, or as much as, the lives around you, you're not going to be able to quit. 2. Take full responsibility for your addiction and its consequences. I don't want to hear anyone explaining their addiction away because of heredity. The idea that you're a drug addict or drunk because your father or your mother or third cousin twice removed was also one is ridiculous. Sure, we know that your genes play a role in this, but it is not the fault of anyone or anything, certainly not some mindless strand of DNA, that you're an addict. Genes are responsible for an increased risk of addiction in many people who become addicts. They are not responsible for the addiction itself. I caused the miserable life I led for 13 years. Yes, the fact that my mom and uncle were alcoholics is germane, but that's not what the academics would call a necessary and sufficient condition. If anything, knowing my family history should have kept me away from this stuff. It was not my mom's fault, not my dad's fault, not my coach's fault, not the fault of the crowd I associated with or the school I attended. It was me. Each of us addicts has to face up to this fact. Once you can admit to this, once you choose to take responsibility for your actions, then you're on your way to long-term sobriety. 3. Redirect your addiction in a positive way. A guy in a drug clinic once posed this question to me. If you couldn't do another Ironman, would you go back to drinking? Heck no, was my response. Yes, I've willingly and gladly changed a positive addiction for a negative one. But I was sober for 6 years before I did my first Ironman. Training for these races has certainly become a part of my recovery, but it is not the only thing keeping me from sliding back to the way I was 13 years ago. No way. That said, I do think my 10 Ironman triathlons illustrate an important point about addiction, and ultimately one that can help many of us. Drug addicts are remarkably good at finding ways to feed their addiction. Think about it. We're creative, resourceful, imaginative, and focused. We get results. Too bad those results often lead us to failures in education and at work, to jail, to disease, destroyed families, or an early grave. Still, that addictive energy, that determination, can be harnessed and redirected into a positive direction. When it is, watch out. I think my 10 Ironmans are an example of that. But so are the ex-addicts who've gone on to build businesses, write books, create music, lead ministries, have successful careers, and happy families. For many of them, it was a matter of taking the addictive aspects of their personality and channeling them into a different direction. So find that direction. 4. Build a strong support system. Family and friends may or may not have anything to do with the fact that you became an addict, but they can play a big role in your recovery. They and others, church, school, community, are essential for helping us get on and stay on the sober path. I'm often asked if I ever get the urge to use. Sure I do, but when I have those cravings, and I'm happy to say that as time goes, they are fewer and farther between, all I have to do is look at Madison, Skylar, Connor, and Mason and know what's really important. For others, it might be a phone call to another recovering addict or a support group. Whatever it is, and whoever it involves, make your connection. Build your support group. Number 5, help yourself and others will help you. No one loves somebody who walks around hat in hand begging for money, especially when that somebody is a former drug addict who has probably already gone to the well too many times in the past. But if you help yourself, you will receive help from others. Getting sober triggered a cascade of positive outcomes in my life. I got back in shape. I returned to school, and I found a great woman. I also repaired many of the relationships with friends and family that had been damaged during my drug years. I am sure one reason this happened was that people around me saw that I was trying to help myself and wanted to be part of it. Show the people in your life that you're working hard toward achieving your goal of sobriety and a new life. You won't have to ask for a helping hand. It will be offered. Number 6, take care of your body and your heart will follow. One reason I couldn't sit through some of the first support group meetings I attended was the fact that I was choking to death from all the cigarette smoke in the room. Why is it that addicts give up drugs and alcohol only to kill themselves with cigarettes? Here's a suggestion. Instead of taking a drag, take a walk. Physical exercise is not only good for your heart and lungs, but also good for your head. Many studies have shown that symptoms of stress, anxiety, even clinical depression can be alleviated through regular activity. You don't have to do triathlons or the Ironman. Even just a brisk 30-minute walk on most days of the week will help your mind and body a whole lot. Certainly a whole lot more than a pot of coffee and a pack of cigarettes. Number 7, believe you can do it. Remember that sobriety is not for those who need it, but for those who choose to have it and work hard to maintain that sober lifestyle. If you want a better life for yourself, you will achieve it. I did it. So have hundreds of other addicts and alcoholics whom I've met or corresponded with over the years. It will take time, effort, and a quality we addicts have to develop: patience. But I am living proof that it can be done, as are hundreds of my Racing for Recovery teammates, friends, and support group members. Sad to say, I also know many who lost hope, stopped trying, and gave up on themselves. Some are dead now. The rest are desperate. The choice is yours. To paraphrase a song Motley Crue did not sing, it was actually the reggae musician Jimmy Cliff. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. But you must try, and try and try. You'll succeed at last. I know you will, if a return to sobriety is truly in your heart. Advice for parents. Want to prevent your child from turning into a pre-recovery Todd Crandall? Here are some tips. Talk to your kids early and often about drugs. If you don't, someone else will, and it may not be the message you want them to hear. Be a positive influence on your kids. Going out to a restaurant, having drinks with dinner, and then driving your family home, for example, does not set a good example. Get your kids involved in activities, sports, music, and art, and be there to support these activities. Go to their soccer or baseball games. Attend the school play or concert. Know your child's friends and their parents. Be aware of what they're doing, who they're hanging out with, what type of environment they're in. Recognize that drugs and alcohol are somewhere in your community, so do not be naive enough to think that your children will not come in contact with them, simply because of where you live or the economic level you have achieved. My dad runs a successful business and is a car enthusiast who belongs to the Porsche Club of Ohio. His son was an addict. Understand that virtually all adult addicts start down the road to addiction as youngsters, just as I did when I drank that first beer in the 8th grade, or as others did when they started smoking cigarettes at age 10. Be aware, and if you see the danger signs, first try to deal with them yourself, in as positive and supportive way as you can. If that doesn't work in a relatively short time, get help, through the school, through your physician, or through a social service agency as soon as you can. Maybe, despite all your precautions, you suspect your child is using. What are the warning signs? Personality changes, changes in eating habits, changes in activity habits, changes in his or her group of friends, and they happen to be friends you'll never get to meet, Any of these changes in and of itself may be no cause for alarm. Kids obviously go through changes. That's what growing up is. But when the sum total of what might otherwise be normal or explainable changes adds up to something that doesn't smell right, there may be a problem. Now is the time to begin seeking some form of counseling or treatment. Don't just hope they'll stop or grow out of it, because they may not. I hope that turns out not to be the case, that you will have to read no further than this, that you can continue to be a parent who is playing prevent defense against substance abuse as opposed to dealing with a real problem. If you are the parent of an addict, however, you have my sympathies. I saw the toll my addiction took on my father and stepmom, and I admit it's only in recent years that these relationships have been repaired. Some of the scars may never heal. Still, there are things you can do to both help and hinder your child's recovery. The cardinal rule for parents of addicts is this: if you are doing something to further that addiction, stop it. If you are doing something to help the recovery, keep doing it. Example: your son calls and says, "I got arrested for drunk driving for the third time. I'm in jail. Come get me." Your response should be, "I'll see you when you get out." I know it sounds cold and heartless. It's not. It's the ultimate form of what's so often called tough love, and with good reason. This is one of the toughest emotional situations a parent can deal with. And it's counterintuitive. Your gut instinct is to want to help. But in a situation like that, you are essentially helping to feed his addiction. On the flip side, if your child calls and says, "I need a ride to a support group meeting," or "I've decided to go back to college, can you help me pay for it?" Or, "I'm struggling right now, can you come and talk to me?" Then the answer is yes, yes, yes. Remember, they've got to get to a point where the addictive life they're leading is so distasteful that they want to stop. That's addiction and recovery in a nutshell. The addict has had enough of the life he or she is leading, wants something better, and is willing to do what it takes to achieve that goal. When this happens, you can have a vital and positive part to play. Now there are many things you can do. Help fund the recovery program. Join your child at support group meetings. Get any medical help he or she may need. And above all, provide soft, as opposed to tough, love and support. At this point, when your child is making a genuine effort to recover, you can and should say yes. Until then, to use the cliched drug advice of decades ago, you're going to have to be strong and just say no to aiding and abetting your child's continued use of drugs and alcohol.